Alrighty, folks, welcome to the Tuesday Live with John Willis from Special Operations Equipment, who is coming to us from his studio. I see you've got a fancy looking logo there in the background.
Yeah, that's just a fancy word for shed.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
shed.
I'm going to get one behind me here soon. I got to talk to you about who your vendor is. Evan from Radio Made Easy has joined us as well today. We can talk all about off-grid communications, ham radio, entrepreneurship. He's recently really gone through a cool journey towards more resilience by launching his own business and doing really well with it. So, guys, this is a great time to tap into that. There's a lot of insights we get early on, I think, in the journey, and you have been killing it. So I'm excited to talk about that today. I'm Nicole from Living Free in Tennessee, and let's start out with John's shirt because that it captures the eye. Tell us about your shirt.
So we got a podcast called Pulling the Thread. We put it up on multi-platforms, and we've been building a bunch of shorts off of it. And it's weird from platform to platform, the differences in conversation, or really the difference in hate and vitriol. So just kind of as a poke at some of these retards, literally they're just fucking retards. As a poke at them, we did a shirt. Scully said, in a very certain situation, I ran out of ammunition at one time. So these kids are like, no, you can't carry more than 3 mags, 6 mags. And you're talking to people who have been in combat all over the world. So we built this shirt, and on the back it says live and die with what's on your back, which was a quote of what Jeff had said. We launched it last night, and they're almost 50% sold out just on a soft launch. Like, we're probably going to actually rerun this one.
Nice.
Cool.
So, guys, if you want to get those, go to soetactical.com and grab your T-shirts before John sells out, or else you're going to have to wait for a rerun, and he has to decide it's time.
We do a new one every week. Every week there's a different design, and if you get on our social media, you will see those or on our text or email app.
Awesome. Okay, Evan, tell us who you are for the 3 people in the audience who have not heard of Evan Dixon from Radio Made Easy.
Oh, well, you got me there, Evan Dixon from Radio Made Easy. I own and operate this company out of my humble little garage here in North Carolina, and kind of on this mission to make it easy for people to use radios that have been intimidated or overwhelmed or scared away by the radio guys that are terrible at what they do. So I am not them, but I'm enthusiastically helping the unwashed masses like myself get into off-grid communications. So that's me.
What does that look like, getting into off-grid communications?
Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, I mean, just about everybody's
using
signals. So walkie-talkie is a very low-powered version of the same kind of technology that I start people out on with handheld radios that operate, some of them within licensed parts of the world and others outside of that. But you can grow from there to really powerful stuff that can talk thousands of miles. So everything in between. And I kind of cover the full gamut of that, but in a digestible way that isn't a physics class or an electrical engineering class or death by PowerPoint, but really hands-on, hold your hand, speak in layman's terms, have nice illustrations, diagrams, analogies that connect to the common person, right? So that's me. I'm not above that. I designed it, as something that I wish I had. So I think it's taken off, but yeah, that's where you start, kind of handheld radios that talk a mile or two. And then when you catch the bug and you're like, man, this is cool. This is a miracle. What else can I do? Then we start getting into more powerful stuff from there.
Cool. Tennessee Permaculture says, I need to get handhelds for our property. I can't remember how many acres it is, but like for a 20 to 60 acre property, what sorts of things should people be looking for?
Yeah, there's a good solution that's pretty economical to get into, where you can put in a crossband repeater. So actually similar to some of these radios I have behind me, you can get a mobile radio and mount that somewhere at the highest point on your property with a stationary antenna, and that can kind of create a network for your whole property. So if you can't make it work without that, right? If you're limited by some sort of obstacle, that's a really cool solution. I've installed several of those in Middle Tennessee recently for different people with similar sized properties, and it works really well. There's the sky's the limit, right? So you can pay a couple grand or a couple $100,000, right? It just depends on what you're trying to do, but that's a good starting point. I saw he said there's no line of sight, so that's exactly what you're overcoming there by putting something at the top of the property, even on a mast possibly, and then that'll cover a lot more area than your handhelds will. So
yeah, I actually need to do that here. We use handhelds that mostly work except for one of the Holler neighbors' homes. It does it gives the scritchy scratch, you know what I'm talking about, where I can tell you're talking. I can kind of tell what you're saying. And we need to up our game here. We put those in place March 2020 when the tornadoes, the big tornadoes came through and comms was out. We couldn't talk to each other except for, walking, which was fine because we're close. But I thought, like, what if there's seriously something going on? There's a sheet of ice between my house and Nighthawk's, and it's inconvenient to do that. So, we'll be talking to you about that eventually.
That's a perfect way of putting it, is like we have the best communications technology, but when that breaks, we're down to yelling and walking, right? Like,
yes.
That's what we've got. So I'm trying to build something in between that's and there's awesome stuff now. Like I'm testing this off-grid texting app called Rattlegram between me and some local guys. We can text each other over the radio using a smartphone, and no one knows it's happening, right? It's kind of sounds like goobly gook over the air, but there's so much cool stuff out there. It is awesome. Very alive and well. So I'm having a blast with it.
Yeah.
How do you keyboard that to use that app, Evan?
So it literally works like a text messaging app, and then there's a cable you take from the phone to the radio.
Okay.
And it broadcasts it out over the radio. So
just burst.
Yeah, and we're gonna put that in the class. It would be perfect for like sending detailed information that needs to be perfect, right? Like a latitude and longitude, or medication instructions, a recipe, something that you don't want to get wrong. It's perfect for that. Yeah, there's Weapons Junkie. He's the one helping me test it here locally. But there's lots of cool stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like it just gets better and easier to use the longer it is. Because when I first started messing with thinking about ham radio, I was like, man, this is an enormous mountain of stuff that I don't want to deal with right now, when I can just, send an email or make a phone call.
Yeah.
But then my eyes were kind of opened up when I had the only way I could get information was by listening to FM radio, which at least I had that. But yeah. So how does a person go from like looking at that mountain to being able to like tangibly use this stuff?
Well, I was just thinking about that. My friend James Yeager back in the day would always say, you could learn everything I'm going to teach you with a pallet of ammo and like a year of your life out at the range, but he just gives you the shortcut. And that really is the truth about most things, and it's that way for radio. So you could spend about a year, maybe 6 months if you're a legend, and self-teach yourself, YouTube University, the radio stuff. That works. That's how I did it. But if you want the easy button, Zero to Hero radio operator course that I put on is exactly that. That's what I was speaking about earlier. That would be the best way to get started. And I'm obviously biased, but there's nothing on the market like this class. There's nothing with that low barrier to entry designed for the common person. That's not boring. That's not tedious and technical. And I don't mean to undersell it. It does get technical, but it comes later, right? You don't start with the waterfall of algebra and physics and all that crap. So that would be the best way to go. I would love if someone had never even bought a radio yet and just shows up, fresh off the boat. That would be great. But usually they've already banged their head against the wall for a while, and that's fine too. And then, of course, I always get that one guy who already knows everything that still comes to class, which we have a blast with that guy too. So it's always a guy. I don't know why.
So like walk us through, because we're doing Zero to Hero Radio Operator 2 days before Self-Reliance Festival, and tickets are on sale at early bird price of $545, including lunches, for a 2-day course. Like, if I go in there and all I know how to do is unlock my phone and use the apps on it, like, what does that look like for me for the next day? Like, what sorts of things are we doing, and what can I expect to learn by the end of it?
Yeah, so we're going to kind of do a crawl, walk, run, or show you, demonstrate to you, and then let you do it sort of approach, just the best kind of learning environment, right? So we're going to talk about how it works, why it works, all that. And then we're going to pull out the equipment. I'm going to hold your hand, get you trained up on everything, right? How to turn it on, how to change the channel, how to do everything as if you're starting completely from scratch, because most people are. We don't jump right into how to program a VHF repeater with a 5 megahertz offset with a 82.5 kilohertz tone. And I'm like, all right, ready, set, go. Nobody's doing that. So we have a proven approach, that we've proven out across a couple hundred people that have done it so far. And I know kind of how to guide you down the path. But basically, we learn the fundamentals, get it started, get you comfortable, and then we start using it. So that's where the real fun is class is scenario based. So now we're taking it outside the classroom. We're doing missions together. We're going to plan a mission, execute the mission, debrief the mission. And that sounds really cool, but it might be like, we're going to go pick up lunch, right? But it's going to be a heavily planned and coordinated lunch run with communications the whole way there and the whole way back. And, it's fun. So we get to implement everything. And that's where people catch the bug, right? When you see, wow, that was a lot of fun. That's the most fun lunch pickup I've ever been a part of. I think I might start plugging these into my life. That's where it really shines. So, to summarize, learn how it works, then do the hands-on hand holding, then do the implementation. And then from there, gets a little more complex. We'll mess with the long range stuff on day 2 and make some contacts coast to coast, show you what's possible with that, which is a real miracle in and of itself that kind of gets people excited. But it's a good time. I think everyone will have fun and learn a lot. Jason
says you get a call sign too.
That's right. Not an FCC call sign, but an
Sexy
SOE.
Tomato 123.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about tomatoes because my tomato walls I'm looking at, it's about halfway up my window right now. So
oh yeah, cool.
The cooling power of the viney plant will be impacting the homestead soon. I was thinking about this today when I walked outside this morning, and it was 64 degrees out there. This time last year, it was like 80 in the morning by that time in the morning. So I'm kind of loving this less extreme oven schedule that we've chosen to do this year. So
just give it a couple days.
I mean, I know it's coming, and I'll get bitch slapped like I always do, but it's, I was looking at the garden. I was like, tactical, I'm going to actually get like Brussels sprouts this year. I have little teeny, like pinhead sized Brussels sprouts. I'm like, just hang on another week, guys. But yeah. Anyway,
we just doubled our ability to put up shade cloth, so everything's under shade right now.
Oh,
nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
And this is my last week in this 2-car garage with no insulation, so I'll be moving into my tiny little shipping container in the backyard, and that will be much easier to contend with the heat. But 2-car garages with uninsulated garage doors south facing are not fun to be in the summer. So I'm looking forward to a change of environment.
That's how we had it in San Diego for years before we moved into a real shop.
San Diego is heaven.
Well, we had 90 degrees south facing, no insulation, detached.
Yep. Okay, Evan. You weren't doing this full time 2 years ago, were you?
No, I wasn't doing this full time 6 months ago, hardly.
So let's talk about how that went down. So what were you doing before?
So I've always been in technology for about, I guess, 12, 13 years. Had a career, worked for big banks, worked for a software startup for the last 7 years. And we got decimated this year at my software startup. Our sales tanked, and we're a business to business kind of software company. I say we, I'm not there anymore. Trying to remove that language from my vernacular, but yeah, so I was with those guys from a pretty early stage and built a ton of automation. And did I lose you guys?
No, we got
we're
you.
here.
Okay. Built a bunch of cool stuff to scale the business, and that's really my wheelhouse, is just finding solutions, finding efficiencies and ways to make life easier. So scaled the business, but the business didn't grow enough to support growth past that, really. So in March, kind of back against the wall, got a call from the CEO. We're just a 20-person company, and said, man, I hate to tell you this, but it's looking like in the next 30 days, we kind of have a go, no go. We lost a big contract and I can't pay everybody. So we're going to go down to skeleton crew of like 3 guys and see if we can weather the storm. But I'm just preparing you, unless a miracle happens here, you're probably getting laid off in 30 days. So that was literally like a couple days before the last SRF, I think, is when I got that. So that was hanging over my head during my first podcast with John and all this stuff. So that crushed me. I'll be honest. Like, I was pretty terrified because I've never really been off of the paycheck plantation, as I've coined it. And so I waited out that month, kind of hoping I wouldn't have to walk the plank. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. They said, sorry, it's gonna fall apart. We're gonna have to let everybody go on. They did an 8-week leave of absence that everyone knew would be permanent, and sure enough, it was. But in the course of that 8 weeks, I think I made more money than I made at my full-time job in about 6 months, and I'm just rocking and rolling. So the stars really aligned. I had done the groundwork to get things off the ground before that happened. And then when I got word, I had about a week of wallowing in my own self-sympathy, and then hit the ground and just started putting my energy into this. And everyone around me is like, are you looking for a job? How's the job search? And I just don't have an answer for them, right? Because it's not, I don't live in an entrepreneurial culture. It's just like my family, my friends, they're kind of like, they're all job people, which is fine, but they don't know what the heck I'm doing. So it's cool. It's a whole new paradigm for us around here. So I'm having a blast with it, though.
I'm laughing because Evan sent me a screenshot and he's like, I've made more money this first quarter than I did all last year. And when he showed his father that, his dad said, but what are you going to do about medical insurance?
Yeah, I mean, he's always had a steady job with good benefits. It's always been a priority for him. And I had a good conversation with him. I think it sunk in, right? I was just like, Dad, I'm doing something different that's going to change the course of our legacy here, right? Like, that's going to change my kids' life and their kids' life, because it's not just the business. It's my mindset is completely rocked now. Like, I only eat what I hunt and kill, and it is very different. Like I was telling somebody the other day, I used to get excited when the month was over because that means you get paid again. And now it's like, man, I wish I had 10 more days in this
10 more
month.
days. Yeah.
Yep.
It's just upside down, but it feels so much more in alignment with how I should be living. I don't know what I was doing, but it was not healthy for me to be stuck. And no shade at my previous employer. Like, he's a rock star. Our CEO was one of the most capable people I've ever met, but I was building his empire, right? Like, and he paid me well to do that, but it wasn't contributing to me. At the end of the day, when times got tough, I was out, and that's how it is. So that's a tough pill to swallow, but that's really, even at bigger companies, it's not even that nice. It's not even that gentle. You don't get a nice phone call with a gentle warning. You might get an email. It's like, thanks for your 7 years of your life. You built thousands and thousands of hours of automation. See you later.
Your phone will be turned off tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
Mail
your
it
email's
back.
already bouncing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I got let down easy, but it was still tough, but I'm really enjoying it. So it's, and it's cool to see all the people that I get to connect with now that are growing that, mentoring that, and helping me with that. So,
so you're the lever. You're the lever of your last name, right? Your family name has had that history, and that's the word you're looking for. You're the lever that's going to change the entire course of that family name. And you did well hiding it. I'm sure that you were concerned about it, but you had a plan and you executed your plan like to the T. You did every single thing you said you were going to do and executed on it. Most people just talk about that and then they're out of money. They're like, hey, I might do this, I might do that. You never said any of that. You said, I am going to do this, and then you did those things proactively.
Yeah, doing something is important. A lot of people talk about doing stuff. I've been around a lot of people with great ideas that are just bitter that they never capitalized on their good ideas. And I've always been entrepreneurial, but it's always been for side hustle money. Like I could make 10 grand in a year and buy a cool toy. Now I can make more and pay for my life with my own effort. So that's, and I got a wife and 3 kids, right? Like I'm not just some, vagabond that can live on potatoes, right? Like I have a lot riding on this. It's not a joke, right? So it's like there's people counting on me, and I hope they never, at least until they're ready, like they're never aware of what is happening, right? Like I hope they see it as the adventure that it is. So it's humbling though to look at the people depending on you and think, all right, gotta keep grinding. They're counting on it.
Well, you talked about mindset a little while ago and how your mindset changed.
Yep.
So, and you have, it's not an unusual story. You wallowed in self grief or whatever, hopelessness for a week. Yep. And then you're like, well, time to stand up and go do something different. Yeah. Was that when your mindset changed, or how did that look? Like, did you have to start exposing yourself to influences from outside? Did you just switch one day, or how did you take that on? Is it proactive or reactive? Is kind of where I'm going with that.
It was definitely more of a dimmer switch than a light switch. And I know it probably appears different. I'm one of those guys that people don't see what I'm really going through. I just don't show it. I'm not expressive, but I was extremely conflicted for about a month. Even after that, like I had an interview with another startup that I was pumped about. I was like, and internally I'm like, oh crap, what if they offer me this job? Like I'm going to have to violate myself. I know I shouldn't take a job. I know I shouldn't even be talking to these people, but it sounds so cool. And I'll get paid. They will pay me. Like I'll be safe again. And I just wanted to, like, I'm so lucky they didn't offer me that job. I was in a pretty vulnerable place that I might've been like, yeah, I'll take 150 grand a year for you to take 10 more years of my life. Right. And they didn't offer it to me. They hired internally, but I sat down with a friend of mine, Jason Barr, and I was like, dude, what do you think about this? He took this same plunge probably 10 years ago, and a very close friend of mine. And he was like, dude, you just got to follow where you feel peace. And I knew already, I felt no peace. I felt like I was completely violating myself to even entertain the idea of getting that job. And so I had kind of predetermined, okay, if they call me back, it's going to have to be like FU money. which it won't be, right? Like I'm not that kind of rock star. So it was not going to be that. And there's just too many confirmations for me that this is what I was supposed to do. So I had to accept that though, right? Because everyone, like I said, all of my friends and family, all my old coworkers are all checking with me constantly, concerned about me. Like, hey, do you have any job leads? How are things going? I have coworkers that have tried to get me jobs I didn't even ask for. And I'm just like, I'm not really saying no, but I'm not saying F off either. And I've had to get off. It really is a plantation kind of mindset. What I mean by that is like, there were slaves that didn't know they were free yet and had been convinced psychologically to stay on the plantation, right? That's what I mean by the paycheck plantation is like, you can leave anytime you want, but you have to leave, right? And it's a psychological, spiritual thing to get out of that. And I was there, man. I was like kicking and screaming internally. I look cool as a cucumber on the outside. I mean, that's how it always is for me, but I was conflicted. So I had to embrace that I was going out on that limb. So
there's a lot of guys get out of prison and they reviolate to go back to prison because they are more comfortable in prison.
I believe that.
Yep. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. It's understandable though. It's not that different than what I'm talking about. It's just go back to the ark you built, right? Like go back to safety, go back to home base. And if you've been kind of brainwashed into that being home base, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just, it has entered your brain, right? That's makes sense. I was doing the same thing or considering it at least, but yep.
So here's a question from Prepared Citizens.
Okay.
How long did it take you to come up with the plan for after the unemployment? Was it a big plan, big action, or piece by piece, little action by little action?
I mean, the plan
Did you just start running?
Yeah. I mean, the plan is say yes to everything. And here's your minimum necessary budget for the month. And so I immediately cut all my expenses to the bare minimum. Like we moved into a different house this past week. We cut our living expenses by about 2/3 immediately, like zero tolerance, just whack. I don't have any debt, so that I'm fortunate with that. I've made good choices and kind of don't drive new vehicles, don't have fancy things. I've always had fun money, but I've never lived extravagantly. So that was an easier adjustment. My wife is very supportive, very hold down the fort mindset, just along for the ride with me and doing what it takes to keep me running. So, I mean, that was all the big immediate stuff, like stop the bleeding. And then the plan has just been say yes to everything and do everything. I mean, I don't have a roadmap. And it's funny because like I used to be on a roadmap call every month at the software company where we would supposedly plan what we were going to do that next month, and then did about a quarter of it. And the rest of it was putting out fires so much that my alter ego was Smokey the Bear. That was what I went by at the company. But no, there's no plan. The plan is create value and sell things to people that they will trade you money for, and then start doing more of that when it catches on, and just innovate and constantly solve problems and constantly create value and have as many conversations with as many people as you can. 1 in 100 will be very valuable, and the other 99 have that same potential. But it's just yes to everything. And I'm running myself ragged, but with that right now, but it's the way to do it. Like I have no doubt in my mind is just like I drove home from Wilmington last night. I spoke to a prepper group in Wilmington 4 hours away. There was only about 12 people there at a park, but I'm saying yes to everything. Someone invited me to come speak. Yes, I'll be there. When is it? I only sold like $600 worth of stuff. It paid for my gas. It paid for my food and a little extra. And yes, because one of those people will spend 10 grand with me. And or one of them will come to a class and bring a friend or something like that. And it's viral. But the poverty mindset we were talking about on your stream some, Nicole, is just like, it lives in fear, and it lives in this lack, this fixed pie mindset that like I have to have a clear-cut plan to get where I'm going, and I can't take any risk, and it's all about what you can't do and why it might not work. And I am shedding that rapidly. I'm not fully rehabilitated, but I'm getting there. So I'm having fun with it though, because it's just like we were saying, the mindset is radically different than let me just do a good job at what I've been assigned to do by the guy above me. And I was at a small company. I had a huge voice. It's still nothing like being on your own. It's just no comparison.
Well, I also noticed that you married a rock star.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's something that if you have a spouse and they are the person, or you are a spouse of somebody
Yep.
who's starting out, and you can be that person,
Yep.
having that extra support, I think really makes a huge difference. Like, I know most spouses from time to time disagree with each other, right? I've never seen Amanda and John disagree with each other in front of people.
You shouldn't ever see us disagree in front. We shouldn't see any of you guys disagree in public.
Certainly nothing of substance. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's because of that, and because both are going in the same direction, that there's that extra boost, right? It's not one person alone anymore.
Yes.
It's a familial approach. And I think a lot of people underestimate how important that is, whether they are the runner or the spouse of the runner. Yep. Like, if you're hearing this and you're like, my spouse is starting this thing and I'm scared, and so I'm putting doubts in their ears, think about what you can do to make them successful by stopping that crap and boosting them by, like, cook some homemade food. It's cheaper. That cuts expenses. Less money has to come in. There's so much you can do to help build that resilience as a family. So I don't know. That just
perfect example is like my wife. We just moved. She handled the entire move. I can do all of that, but I have to do other things. Like now I can't just kind of take a chill pill for the week from my, sorry, I saw Bob's thing. I can't just kind of take a week off from my job now to help move, right? Like, it's like we had a talk. I'm like, sweetheart, you're on this, right? Like, whatever you need from me, tell me, but I have to be on earning, right? Like, I'm the earner now, and it's different than it was. And she's completely awesome about it. But even down to like, I need a bag packed for when we move to the new house that has like 4 days worth of stuff in it while we're not unpacked yet. Mm-hmm. I can completely do that myself, right? Like, it's not that I'm a child. It's that I don't have to go do it now. And she provides that value to me that is irreplaceable, right? Just like something that I can just assume it's taken care of, and I can keep running hard at what I need to run hard at. And we just accept what lane we're in for right now. And that is ever evolving, but it has worked really well for us. It's just, it's hard to find somebody that's willing to do that these days, but I struck gold on that front for sure. So it's
well done. That probably means you see people
twice,
who they are. Oh, well, that's a lot of people.
She believes in you. She's not looking you to get a job. You're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this work. It's going to suck for a little while. Just like Jack's wife, when he said, hey, 6 months. And then he said, I need another year, but this is going to be worth it.
Yeah. And she's like always supportive. It's interesting because Dorothy is the most supportive person. She's supportive not only of Jack, but of all her friends. Oh, yeah, you can do that. I know you can do that. That's her attitude. Hey, Brandon, thanks for the super chat to whomever's channel that went to. We really appreciate it. Wanted to highlight that one.
Yeah, man.
Let's see. The only reason I'm not turning wrenches is because my wife told me to quit. Been 4 years now.
Yeah.
So it's a thing. It's definitely a thing. And
Bob had asked if any of your preps helped you to feel better about the situation when you did lose that permanent employment, had to go on your own. Was that did that help relax things a little?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a pig and a cow in the freezer. I've got enough rice and beans to live on a year. I mean, that's a savings account, literally. So yeah, I don't even know that I considered it because it's just how we live, where we could not really be disrupted for our necessities, right? Like it's just a foregone conclusion for us. But other than the kids not having whatever cool treat they like to have, right, they would have to adapt pretty quickly to a more modest lifestyle. But other than that, yeah, the preps, they're a nice little buffer, that's for sure. Trying to think what else that would be prep related. I mean, like I have a bug out trailer that I run my business out of too, we moved our entire house with this 16-foot enclosed trailer that has power, and like, it's just stuff like that. Like I've made really good choices for what I spent my money on that certainly helped build a scaffolding around life. I keep getting the wheel of death with you guys, but I'm still here.
We're hearing you. Yeah. So the good news is it's probably just a video wheel of death. You might have some audio issues, but
yeah, cool.
Sometimes that happens on StreamYard, and yeah, is what it is.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have, invested in stuff that gives me a buffer.
Yeah, I know the 1 year, like my hardest year of transition, it became a game how long I could go until I bought toilet paper. And the answer was I had inadvertently stored a year's worth.
Wow.
But I was like, this is why I have the pantry, is so I don't have to spend the money. And I think I earned about $15,000 that year total. Yep. And I came out on the better side. I mean, I think I didn't go further into debt, but by the second year out, I was starting to pay off my debt again. Yeah. And it was all because of that sort of pantry rotation mentality and having stores. It was just like, as you said, everything's a savings account. It's like the toilet paper savings account and the food savings account and all of that. And then having skills to be able to grow the food. Yeah. You can spend a lot of money growing food, more money than you spend at the grocery store or buying food. But you can do it the other way too, or you can, compare like to like anyway. Yep.
Well, and the quality of the food that you can grow is superior, and at least where I live and where a lot of people live, to what I can get my hands on within a few miles of my house.
Yeah. I was listening to one of Jack Spirko's shows, and he was interviewing somebody. I think it was the coming energy transition guy.
Okay.
No, it was Toolman Tim. He was interviewing another prepper in Canada who we totally need to
Toolman Tim.
Yep.
Yeah. So this guy talked about how the 80-year cycle that we're in, and this decade is the one that's supposed to be the hardest, and the transition looks like it's going from centralized systems to decentralized local systems, right? And as I heard that, I started thinking about power and what's happening with our power grid. Like, that's a major centralized system that's really expanded in the last 80 years. And if that goes out and the equipment is destroyed, we may have the knowledge about how to fix it, but we do not have the materials right now.
Yep.
And so then what I think is going to happen, if that happens, is that smaller communities who have knowledge will figure out how to produce some power. But how does that play into communications? Like, what are your thoughts when you hear that? Like,
it's completely analogous, because it's like, we were talking earlier, I got a Starlink, right? So Starlink is a miracle, like an amazing technology, but at the end of the day, it still plugs into the same crap that your DSL and your cable plugs into, right? So like I say this all the time in my talks, but we have the coolest, most high-tech technology, but we are the more fragile every day, right? Like we're more dependent on the centralized, not distributed systems that we depend on, and we don't have any alternatives. So, I mean, everything you have connects to the same system as far as your cell phone, your internet, your Wi-Fi, your if you have a landline, right? Like all that infrastructure requires power to run, and it's all connected back. You know, if it's wireless, it's still connected to a wire at some point, and it's the same wires that run other places. So, you know, this with communications, you need something independent of that you own, right? So like similar to solar, right? Like if you own your own solar panels and you have off-grid storage for power, you're insulated from the consequences of the grid either being unreliable or non-existent, right? So it's not necessarily designed initially. What I love about my own approach in my life is it's supplemental for now. Like Nicole, I use your pantry thing a lot in my presentations where I'm like, comms have benefit for today in the same way a stocked pantry has benefit for today, right? Like it's very convenient. It's very problem solving oriented, where when you run out of something, you have a replacement. You don't have to run to the store. Yeah, it has that effect, but it also has end of the world benefit too. But it's both. It's not one or the other. So with comms, it's starting with, you know, can I notify my spouse of where I am in a 30-mile radius from home if my phone doesn't work, right? Let's solve that one problem. Can you pull it off? Maybe. Can you do it without a grid connected device? You know, you're in a real pickle if you can't do that. And the balloon went up while you were at work that day, and you may never see them again because of that. So it could be solved for like $100. So
Yeah.
do you want to do that or not? Or do you know, like perfect example for something we used as recently as yesterday is we're driving in 2 vehicles and we have mobile radios installed in both vehicles. So when one of the kids needs a potty break on the interstate, we can radio up to the other car and get immediate feedback, right? Like we need to get off now. There's no missed call. There's no texting and driving. There's no voice to text BS that doesn't really work. It's just pick up the mic, talk to the person. You know, it's like stuff that has been available for 50 years. It's not cutting edge, but it solves a real problem. So you can start that now, much like you can with power. It'd be the same thing as having a generator or having a modest solar system or something like that. Same type of solution where you can really start improving your life and make yourself more resilient with some off-grid communication solutions.
Yeah. And the cost to entry is less than every other one of those things you named.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, I mean, so many guys have $2-3 grand in a rifle, but you would use that radio every day, and you can do it for, you know, a couple $100.
Yep. Yeah, but a good Honda generator costs 3 or 4 times as much. A solar setup, even if you're going with like a Jackery or an EcoFlow, it's going to be a couple grand once you get into it. And none of those are going to save you if you need to talk to your wife from 30 miles away, right? They're not going to do that. Your wife might have plenty of power at home, but she doesn't know where you are, right? And so I think there's a real reality check people need to have about, like, think about this. Like, if you don't have cell signal, like, just imagine wherever you're sitting right now listening to this, you have nothing, right? You're down to.
I, in fact, have nothing where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
Cell signal wise.
But I mean, like, your internet's dead.
Yeah.
Your cell phone is dead. Nothing works. And maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe it's just all overloaded, or there's a natural disaster. It happens all the time. What are you going to do? Like you said earlier, are you going to have to go walk or yell to the person that you need to talk to? There's a lot of circumstances where that's either impossible or not safe, or not even, you might even not be able to, right? You might be injured, or it might be inclement weather, right? There's a lot of reasons. So you can solve that problem real easy. You got to solve it now. I think one of the things I run into with people, why I was inspired to start the company, is everyone thinks they're going to rise to the occasion. They have these Baofengs in their closet, and it's like a good luck charm.
That guy.
Yeah. And there's, for every one of those guys I meet, there's 100 more that they already have the radios. And thankfully, many of them are humble enough to admit, yes, I need help. But having the radio is not enough. Like, you got to at least have it programmed and at least have a basic idea of how it works. And even that might not be enough, but that's much better than nothing. So that's all stuff I can help you solve.
Yeah. And that philosophy is the same across all of these areas where we need to prepare, right? Like, you can peel the onion layer by layer. You can start with a couple of small handheld radios and then build something stronger over time. But if you don't use them, then when you need to use them, you don't know how to use them. And the same goes for if you have all this long-term stored food in your back closet that you never look at and have never cooked, you'll probably figure out how to get it in your pie hole, but it may not taste very good. And if you set up a system where you're rotating and actually using the stuff, then you know how to cook with it. Then you know how to make it actually pleasant. If you have a solar system or a battery bank, that's just your battery. I'm going to put one in here before I get solar panels on my house, actually. That's my next thing. I can like charge it from the grid, and then I want to be able to run all my freezers and fridge up here, which is a lot, which is why I'm doing it that way. Cool. And then I can add solar panels later. Like, we just peeled off part of our system here for another building completely. But I just realized yesterday the power went out, and a day before yesterday, and I have these light bulbs that they charge in the lamp. So when the power goes out, I just reach in there and I have lights again. And because of the new solar system, I have water. So that's all done. But I was like, man, if this goes longer than 8 hours, I'm going to have to drag out the generator. I'm going to have to cook down the fridge and the freezer. I was like, it's not the end of the world. I'm prepared for it. But I thought, what if I actually use my 30% tax credit this year and get another battery bank and just put it in for those things? Then I'm done. Right?
Yeah.
So it's all layers of the onion. You start with the light bulbs for power, and then you go to a battery bank and a generator and all of those things if you need them. We got one here from Jason Barr, who gave a super chat. I think they gave it to you, John. So thanks for that, Jason. Need to communicate with your kids. Don't want them on cell phones. Radios, fun and convenience for everybody on the homestead. Yep. Turn it into a game.
I do that with my kids. I've got a radio here. Let me find it. Oh, so I built this one for a customer this week for his son. So it's just a Baofeng that I painted red. Took it apart, spray painted it. So it's fun. He wanted a fire engine red radio. He's like 5 years old. And I'm like, yeah, man, I will.
That's what I want too, Evan. Fire engine red.
Yeah. I will hook you up and make it fun, make it, inviting for whoever you're doing it with. But kids, what I loved about it with our kids is it gives them like this independence, right? Where they're still kind of on the leash a little bit, where you can talk to them, but you can send them out into the woods or into the backyard without completely cutting the cord. But you're not handing them a $300 smartphone or a flip phone that anyone on earth could call and talk them into doing something. It's much more controlled than that. But that is not like some far-fetched scenario where you want to be able to talk to your kids while they're playing outside. It's like, I would hope that's pretty normal, unless your kids live on screens. Like, hopefully no one listening to this has a kid like that. But my kids play outside and take a radio with them. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Then if there's a problem, you can go help.
Yep. And if they lose it, or break it, it wasn't an iPhone, right? It's something that's pretty low cost. It's replaceable. And it's a cool way to do it. Jason, I think, uses it at their little homestead. They have a girl preteen girl or early teen girl that doesn't have a phone yet. So they hand out one of the radios to her when she's helping around the farm, and they've found that useful.
We have some super chat banter going on between Overton Window and Jason.
Okay.
Overton Window says, I'm calling the FCC.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Jason says, they won't fit through my door.
Yep.
Gauntlet thrown.
You don't have to call the FCC. Just call a ham radio guy. They're worse than the FCC.
Let's talk about ham radio. 30-day review says, any plans to extend into ham as well?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
I'm already extended into ham. I just don't call it that because of the connotations. I'm a general class licensed radio guy, so I have all the amateur privileges to do all kinds of stuff. I intentionally don't focus on that. I don't mention it. We do talk about it in class, of course, but for these type of conversations, that's not on my radar. We're about solving the problem. I will steer you in the right direction to do it without breaking any rules. If that's your desire, we can certainly accomplish that. There's ways to do it without breaking rules, and you can do all the stuff we're talking about. If you want to get more advanced, that is going to be allowed to do some of the more advanced stuff, you need a license. But I intentionally just set that aside, right? Like if I was talking about cars, no one would be like, well, don't forget you have to get a driver's license. Like, no, we're talking about cars, right? Like it's just assumed, yeah, there might be some things you have to figure out. You're going to have to go to the DMV. You're going to have to get insurance, that sort of thing. But no, we're going to talk about how cool cars are and what kind of problems they solve. That's the way I am with radio. I'm not going to beat you over the head with the rules. And I love freedom, so I'm not obsessed with rules, right? Like I don't see the rules as a good thing necessarily, as some people might. I don't worship the rules, but they are there, so we got to account for that. And I certainly do in class kind of teach you some ways to creatively work around those limitations. Or if you want to go down that route like I have, you certainly can. It's just a commitment to learning some things and taking some tests that aren't fun to do.
Yeah, I've heard they're not fun to do at all. So
I would love in my lifetime to see that requirement lifted. Like it would bring a tear to my eye to see it just be like a $35 fee and sign a paper, and now you can do it. Like I can do that with yeah, you only need a driver's license if you're pulled over. That's right. That's actually
and to get on an airplane.
Very analogous to radio. So
yeah. It is very analogous. Okay, Bob Lester asks, is a radio better than a Glock to call for help? Currently using 3 quick shots to signal for an emergency, asking for a friend.
Well, depending on the price of ammo. Yeah. And anybody can fire off 3 shots, so who knows who it is.
Right. Depending on the city, nobody would look twice at your 3 shots.
Right.
It's easier to get a concealed carry permit than a ham license. Isn't that absurd?
Legitimately is. You can take, in my state, you can take an 8-hour class and hit a man-sized target 10 out of 30 times, I think, and they'll give you a concealed carry permit. But you got to take a closed book test for a ham license.
There's less licensing to have a person.
Oh, absolutely. No licensing for that.
Yeah.
You can create a human being.
Yep.
Yeah, I took the written test for the carry permit like a decade ago and got every question right.
Oh, we don't have a written test here.
And then we had to do a shooting test. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I never got my stupid permit. So
is the written test open book, or do you have to do it like in a proctored environment where
it was proctored?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
It's
that's better.
It was really
8 hours.
easy.
It's going to be 8 hours. They're going to tell you to bring 50 rounds of ammunition. You're not going to fire 50 rounds of ammunition. Depending on the instructor, he's going to make it less boring or more boring.
Yeah.
And then once you've had it for 3 years, I believe still in Tennessee here, it's a lifetime after that, or 10 years maybe.
Yeah.
Ham license is a lot more work than that. I'll leave it at that, but it's hard. For normal people, it's hard. If you think it's not hard, you're not normal.
You're an engineer.
Yeah.
That's
you're
where
out of touch with reality. Sorry.
So what downsides are there to radio?
Well,
None.
other people can listen. So much like other things, if someone's tuned into the frequency you're using and you're not encrypted and you're not digital and you're able to be observed, and that can work in your favor or to your disadvantage for sure. They are very finicky, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So things that should work in theory often don't, and things that should not even be possible somehow work. So it's not as easy as join onto the Wi-Fi network and start chatting, right? Like there are so many variables. You're dealing with a physical phenomenon, right? Like you're trying to get radio waves to leave your radio and enter another radio reliably enough to carry your signal from it to the place it needs to go. So environment changes, location changes, it's finicky, it's hard. You need to have a problem solving mindset if you're going to use radios, especially mobile, right? Like stationary systems are more reliable, but yeah, that's a huge downside, is like it's not reliable. So you're going to have to know how to solve problems and how to fix things and how to make it work. I'd say that's a big one. Nobody's coming to help you either, right? Like you got to be, you can call me, but who do you have a local like repair shop for radios or a local guy? Probably not. It's a pretty short list. So it's not like most things where there's an abundance of help out there. So you need to be pretty self-reliant.
Yeah. What distance can a normal radio reach? Like the ones in your kit that you put together. I'm assuming he means the kit that you did with John Willis.
Yeah, those handhelds, I mean, it's one of those it depends questions, but everyone wants a number. I would say 1 to 2 miles in a normal environment that you're not obstructed by a mountain or a hill or a metal or concrete building, that sort of thing. Height makes might with radios, well, at least for UHF, VHF stuff. For handhelds or short range stuff, the higher your antenna, the more propagation you get, the further it reaches, right? So if you're not able to make a contact, get to high ground and remove the obstruction. That could mean climb up on the water tower. That could mean throw an antenna up in a tree, get on the roof, get in the attic, go drive to the top of that hill, drive to the top of that bridge, that sort of thing. But everyone wants a number. 1 to 2 miles for handheld to handheld is pretty reasonable. It could be 100 yards in the wrong environment, though. And then with HF, you can talk around the world with no infrastructure. So literally everything in between. If you can use a repeater, which is basically like a radio network that people put up in your community, those will extend your range 10 to 50 miles. So the downside is you need to have privileges to use those repeaters. So if you don't have those privileges from the Crown, you will be harassed. So that's one of the big reasons to advocate for getting your license, is you can do that without being harassed. So,
though in an emergency, how much are they going to harass you?
Well, you're actually excluded from the rules if you're acting in defense of life or property. So, yeah, but if you don't know how to use it in the good times, you won't remember in the bad times. So it's kind of like carrying a gun, right? You better figure out how it works when you're not under stress, because when stress comes, things don't work like they used to.
This is a true story. Very true story. Let's see.
I'm missing all these comments.
That's
Sorry.
okay. I'm starring the ones that have questions as best I can. And guys, if you want me to see that you have an actual question, the first couple words or all of it in uppercase letters, so all caps, makes my job a lot easier. These eyes aren't what they used to be. Evan, if I wanted to talk to you from my state, would high frequency be the best setup for a base station or a mobile base station?
Yeah, so HF, if you're trying to reach out beyond, say, 30 miles, 50 miles max, you're going to need to be using HF, which is just a different type of radio. And you can set up an antenna in your yard, usually a really long wire, 63 feet or 128 feet wire that's invisible to the human eye from further than a couple yards away. But that will let you talk hundreds of miles without any infrastructure. But it's much more finicky, much more difficult to learn. You need to take a class. You need to come try it. That's what some of these behind me are, HF radios. They come in, small, compact, portable setups or more permanent setups. But that's a whole different can of worms. That's a lot of fun to learn to do that long range stuff.
I like that you take the approach of not mentioning ham at all in your discussion about this, because I think, like libertarian policy, many of us have had very negative interactions on the topic of ham radio that started with the tactics and the details. We got confused and never got to the big picture. So I love that you start at the big picture. Like, why do you think you're the kind of person that realizes that? Because a lot of ham guys don't realize that.
Well, they are. I know they're, for the most part, well-intentioned. They feel very strongly about, like, it literally is gatekeeping with ham radio. Like, I don't mean that in just a derogatory way. Like, by definition, they want educated and licensed people only to be using it, because they imagine that people are going to be disruptive and cause problems, right? So I think they have a negative worldview that says people are bad, and so I need to prevent bad people from coming into my space, and this is my territory. So keep the bad guys out, which are the unlicensed people. And I get that. That's just not how I see the world. I've traveled all over the country. I've traveled all over the world. I've met awesome people everywhere I go. I have great conversations with everybody I sit down with. I see the good in the world. I don't have this antagonistic view of the world. I think people generally do the right thing and good things. And if they don't, I'm not going to help them, right? Like, I'm not empowering criminals and empowering people that are up to no good. I can read people well enough to know what their intentions are. So I don't have that same worldview. I'm sure that's why. But I also have just had so many conversations where people immediately, if you mention ham, they have a whole different response to you. And it's like very clear to me, just remove it from any of your introductions. Get to it when it's relevant. But I just have very little in common with those guys. I mean, I have a whole bunch of clubs all around here. I never darken the doorway of a radio club, and I'm doing business with I'm bringing thousands of people a month into the hobby, and they're dying. They have 3 or 4 guys that get together once a month and talk about their blood pressure, and that's it. It's miserable. So I don't have a lot of stuff in common.
Every time you have one of these conversations, there's a bunch of people that will jump in and point out that you're supposed to have a license. And when you ask them what their license is, they don't themselves have licenses. It's the same thing with all the gun stuff. Look at all the infighting in the gun community. Everybody's going to tell you what you should do. Who's going to report you for something? One of those guys. Like, they're not helping anything. They're literally helping the Gestapo.
Yeah. And I think you've mentioned it. You're totally right, John, that they are more of your concern than the FCC itself, right? Like, they are going to be more hostile towards you. The ham guys, I mean, that are licensed, they'll come find you. And so I think generally, if you act gentlemanly and you don't create a disturbance and you don't mess with people and do things that are disruptive, you're not going to have a problem. But if you do, you'll make all the ham fuds mad, and just go to like a Whole Foods or something. They'll never find you.
Yeah. Jason says I get that's illegal on every one of my videos on TikTok because he's always making fuel on TikTok, as I recall.
The illegal part is funny too because it's not a law, it's a rule, and those are different. Like it's not
the same thing.
It's not a felony or a misdemeanor to transmit on a radio without a license. It's against the rules. It's not a law. You're not going to get arrested. You're going to get fined at best. So, and yeah, I don't encourage doing that. I'm just saying at least be honest about what we're talking about, right? Don't intimidate people that are trying to talk to their kids in the backyard.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't leave anybody with like that demotivates people.
Of course. It's completely irrelevant until we get to a place where it is relevant, and I'll decide when that is, not you, basically.
Yeah. Well, that attitude's why you're successful.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I mean, look how many people are busy. I'm going to start this business, but I don't have a business plan. I'm going to start this business, but I don't have an SBA loan. They're not going to start shit. They're gonna piddle around with it for 3 years. You've done more in 30 days than they have done in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And I get that. Like, I think we are kind of brainwashed into seeing the world as this place that you got to check all these boxes before you're allowed to do anything. That's what government school has done. And I get that. It's just, you don't have to live there. Like that's not actually true. You can be free. So you can turn that completely around and start doing stuff now and figure that out later. Like that's actually how everything naturally works that way. This is completely unnatural to have to go get all your ducks in a row first. Like nothing works that way. Like watch a kid learn how to walk. Do they get all their ducks in a row? Like, no, they fall and hurt themselves over and over and over, and finally they figure it out. So I think Jody is very adamant that I need to talk about GMRS. So I can give that a plug. If you are concerned about being within the rules, there is kind of this best kept secret in radio called GMRS. You can go to radiomadeeasy.com, check out my guide on the GMRS process, because the FCC website is so unintuitive that you won't be able to figure it out without my guide unless you work there. But basically you can have access to a subset of the radio frequencies without having to pass any kind of test for $35 that covers you for 10 years, all the way up to your grandparents and all the way down to your grandchildren. So it could probably cover like 50 people if you're in a big family for one license. And if you have repeaters in your area for GMRS, it could be a really big asset that works almost the same way that ham does. And you don't have to pass any kind of test, which is exactly where I hope all of it goes someday. But the cat's out of the bag now. That's a really growing area of radio that I don't think people know what to make of it. It's really cool to see like it's starting to take off because of YouTube's. There's some channels that have kind of evangelized it, but you can go to mygmrs.com and see if there's any repeaters in your area. Mm-hmm. If there are, man, you have a really good little miracle there to be able to. We have 3 here, so like me and my wife use GMRS repeaters all the time. But a lot of areas don't. Maybe you want to invest and set one up or something like that. If you do, talk to me. I can help. But that's a good option for you if you're really concerned about not breaking any rules. There is a path that does not require you to become like a freshman electrical engineering student.
Yeah. Overton Window says, John, I stole your advice. A buddy came to me wanting to start a t-shirt company, had all the ideas and even started paperwork. Didn't have a shirt.
Didn't have a shirt.
I've got this business. How much money did you make? I haven't made any. Well, then you don't have a business. You have a hobby.
You have a business idea.
Right. I don't know who I heard it from, but that idea of just, I think it was Hermosi that's just like, go get someone to trade you money for something. Like, that's
It's allowed versus able. Allowed versus able. You might want to try that thing that you're thinking you're going to put all this time into. You might not like it.
Yeah. You might not like it. It might suck. Nobody. Yeah.
30-day reviews wants to know, is GMSR what farmers have and use?
I don't know. Maybe so.
I think our guys are using VHF out here. All our farmers. We had that conversation with Jack.
Oh, really? I didn't get that far. I guess I missed that one.
Yeah, I don't know if it was on video or prior to, but I think because they have their own channels, so I think it's like the Motorola job site radios.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's worth mentioning is if you have a commercial business of some kind, you can get a commercial license and be completely encrypted and legal within your business to operate a radio with no license. No ham license, you get a commercial license. So if you go to a Kohl's or a Costco or a Walmart, they're either running unlicensed frequencies or they're running a business license. All those people did not pass a ham test, right? So that's where people are just completely wrong about what you need. So there's lots of options that don't involve, entry-level electrical engineering degrees.
That's really good to hear, Evan.
Yeah.
Because I don't want an entry-level electrical engineering degree. That's for sure.
I don't blame you.
So Jason keeps wondering what his communication solution is, but I don't know what his communication problem is, which is why I haven't brought that question up. I'm wondering if you know, Evan. If not, Jason, give us a little bit more detail on what you're asking, because you're asking what radio to use. Jason Routport.
Yeah, I think
right here.
He's probably talking about his story about being out on his trash route and witnessing an attempted murder, basically in a cell phone dead spot. So I use that in one of my presentations. I stopped telling that story because of the looks of horror I got when I explained that a woman was getting run over by her boyfriend in front of him. It's not really the look I'm going for.
Yeah.
But I tell some softer version of it, right? But he witnessed this really terrible thing and kind of in this conundrum of what do I do? Do I put her in my truck and go get help? Do I leave her here and go get help? Do I send for help? But he was crippled by not having cell phone coverage in the middle of a state park, I think. I think it was like 12 or 15 minutes away from service, too. It wasn't like right up the road. It was like, I'm going to have to drive to get signal. So for that solution, a mobile radio in your vehicle that is able to have all the local repeaters programmed into would be the right solution to that. So you just find the repeater that you can access, get on there and say, hey, I'm at this location. Can someone who's listening send help? It will be a ham guy's wet dream to have been able to send you help, right? Like he will love that he got this opportunity to help, and he's not going to ask for your call sign either, right? Like he's going to be like, yes, sir, I'm on my way, sir. And it'll be great. So, I mean, it's tapping into an off-grid communication network, right? So if you don't have cell coverage, there are people listening to those repeaters all day, every day. They're on in their office or in their garage or in their truck, and they'll listen. So that's a good option. I have one in every vehicle, but I am a ham nerd, right? I am a radio nerd. So I don't know that everyone's going to want to do that permanently. A good option is just have one in the glove box that you could throw up easily. And I sell kits for stuff like that.
Yeah. The other side of that is you have to know where your location is. And a lot of people have no idea where they are now.
That's true.
When they're places, they're just following the instructions here.
Do you think that most of those ham guys already have the patch to sew onto their felt vest when they get to use that assistance, or do you think they have to buy it and order it to sew it on?
I've got it. I'm sure it's right in the top drawer of their dresser, just waiting to go.
Their Weeblo patch.
Yep.
All right. Do you play on high frequency much or mainly VHF, UHF? My mind was blown when I got my General and was talking around the world with a cheap wire antenna and a tuner hooked to an old car battery.
Yeah, I play on it with classes. That's it. Like radio's not for fun for me. Like it solves a real problem. So unless I'm teaching somebody or I'm making a directed contact, which means like there's someone out there, a specific person that I want to reach or needs to reach me, I'm not really playing radio. So what you see a lot with HF guys especially is it's like a glorified form of fishing, right? Like it's like I put my call sign out into the ether, and some random dude talks back to me, and I celebrate that I made a contact in Las Vegas today. And I did that for like 2 weeks just to see how it works, but I have plenty of things to do, right? Like I'm not sitting around trying to talk to randos on the airwaves. So it is a good practice to like know how your equipment works, but really my main emphasis is when I teach a class, we set it all up and I teach people how to use it. There's an awesome YouTube channel, The Tech Prepper, that takes through directed contacts, and he shows how hard it really is if I want to talk from point to point to a specific person. I'm not just fishing. It's like if I want to catch a certain kind of fish for a certain length, that would be a much harder thing than just generally fishing, right? So it's very similar to that, and I aspire to know how to do that as well as he does. But I'm definitely not a hobbyist. I'm a very practical oriented radio user.
I think that becomes more and more true when you get further into running your own business, right? Is how much time do you have to do kind of dick around things? And the answer is less and less time, or no time if you're if you're going towards a goal. You know, and I used to dick around a lot, but it's interesting.
To get paid to do it.
I'm getting paid to be on my Facebook account. Nope.
Yeah, I think for me, I love to learn like the 80% of something, and then the last 20%, I'm kind of ready to move on. So I'm a generalist by nature. I would rather know enough to be functional and then get on with the next thing that can be helpful to me. I do appreciate a specialist. I have huge respect for somebody who's going to know everything about something, but that's just not my bag. Not usually.
Like John said, able versus legal. Our local Walmart uses Baofangs on UHF without a license because the manager brought a bunch of them to work and handed them out when they needed new radios. Yeah. And unless somebody says something, nobody cares.
Well, chances are they're not going to punch through the wall anyways, are they, Evan?
Probably not, especially on low power. If you're setting them up right, you're not disturbing anyone. I mean, imagine like it's literally no different than saying like you're not allowed to say words. Like it's the same thing. It's just the machine is making a signal that's inaudible, but you're creating a signal with a device, and another device is receiving that signal. And you're telling me that if I don't have a stamp of approval, I can't do that? Like, it's just silly. Like, give me a break. So there are ways to do it that you can use MERS or GMRS frequencies that are actually allowed to be used without licenses for FRS or something. So there's all kinds of stuff you could do where you're not even breaking a rule. But even if you were theoretically breaking the rule, who are you upsetting inside of that Walmart, right? Like what are we really talking about? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you to receive my signal.
It's kind of like crop pollution from trademarked seeds the pollen comes over into the field and then messes everything up.
There are people making disturbances that they take that very seriously. Like there's just been one in the news that this guy got fined $40,000 for playing a recording every week over this radio club's net that they held every week, and the FCC finally showed up and observed him doing it and fined him $40,000. It was like years of him intentionally creating a nuisance, right? And he probably had some beef with somebody, but I'm not legal advice. I'm not an attorney, but they don't do that very often. There's only a finite number of those people. They're concerned about other things than Walmart telling you what aisle needs to be mopped.
Same with pirate radio station. Like there was a dude they finally shut down, and I think he got a little bit of jail time. Maybe it was a fine, but they hit him twice and said, "Hey, knock it off." Like they came to him, seized his equipment. It was the third time when they finally there was actually a punishment. Most of the dudes that are going to show up at your house are radio guys. They're bored old dudes, and they call it a fox hunt. They're gonna DX you. They're gonna find you. Hey, get a license. They'll even help you get a license for the most part. It's a game for most of them.
Yeah, some areas not to play around with would be anything related to emergency services and anything related to the Coast Guard. If you live near the beach or a body of water, they will come and get you. But otherwise, like play in the right pond, right? Play in the right pasture, and you'll be fine. But I don't advocate like doing something illegal or against the rules. There are ways to just circumvent that, right? Where you don't even need to worry about breaking rules. That's what irritates me that isn't really shared, is things like GMRS or things like MERS, where you don't actually even need anything. That's completely forgotten or not mentioned. I'm kind of tired of talking about it, to be honest, but I think we beat that one to death enough.
Yeah, that horse is dead. We don't need to hit it anymore. So this is a question I think about CBs.
Okay.
Where do you see the CB band as being useful?
I think it's pretty irrelevant now as far as like something that you would want to invest heavily in. If you have one, I think it's a great way to connect with people that are using it. But I wouldn't build my house on that foundation, so to speak. I think there's a lot better stuff with GMRS or something like that. CB though, like you should have that for information gathering. You should have that for being able to communicate with truckers and with other people that use it. You should have everything, right? Like I wouldn't tell somebody, don't ever buy a revolver that they don't, it's like, semi-automatic Glock is a superior solution in most ways, but there are corner cases where it's a better idea. So I think it's similar to that. I would say make sure you're using the right tool for the job. I would say CB is somewhere bordering on a gimmick to a compromise solution, but you should have everything at your disposal. I have nothing against having it.
So sort of beyond radio and communications, how has like this journey since only a few months ago changed your outlook on the future? I asked the easy questions.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot more than how do I break the rules or not. But yeah, I think it's changed it a lot. I mean, like we were saying, I'm trying to have a big picture mindset about it, a big picture perspective, and seeing, what does this look like 5, 10, 15 years from now? When can I hire my kids? Can I give this business to one of my kids, or can I raise up some other youngsters and inspire them the way I was inspired, stuff like that. I'm definitely thinking along those lines. Also just seeing how powerful the entrepreneur network is and seeing how enthusiastic the people I now have access to because I'm one of them. And not that it was an exclusive club, but you can't talk about some of this stuff with any level of authority until you're really in it. Like I hear people ask John all the time on member meetings about starting something. It's like, you really need to go do it so that you have something to bring to the table for the conversation. Like there's only so much that talking about it before you've done it can do, because all of the learning happens in the doing. It doesn't happen in the planning. So like your plan is going to suck. So you just have to accept that and go do a bunch of stuff and see which thing sticks to the wall. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of been a little bit of a white pill, to be honest, because I thought it was going to be really hard, and it is hard in some ways, but I like it. So I don't know, I've kind of got the bug, I guess, for that, but we'll see. I think the other aspect of it is seeing how my business is kind of me. It's my brand. It's my life kind of it's all enveloped in me now. So it's like, I don't exist separately from it the way I did with my job, where I go to the job or I work for that job and then I'm off and I have family separate from work or what. It's like, it's all just intermingled. And so I definitely have to have some boundaries around that, but it just feels far more natural and reasonable as a way to live. So, yeah, that's how I would put that.
That's a good insight. I think I think the reason you see the circle of like the entrepreneur network around you is because not only are you doing it, but you're pushing past your boundaries, right? And I think when people see that, then they want to say, okay, I can give you a little shortcut or a hand up. And then you exceed what they just did. And I think for a lot of people, that's the payback, is seeing somebody take, like, I don't know how many times John tells people that, no, you're not going to start that. But I'm sure he probably says that regularly when people say, I'm going to start this thing. And when somebody like you comes back and says, well, I did. So,
right.
That's a huge payday. I mean, I assume it is for you, John, but it's great to see that somebody does something with what you give them as opposed to nothing.
Well, when you tell them, no, you're not, they don't waste your time anymore. And some of them come back and they're like, hey, here's what happened and here's what we did. And generally the answer is, okay, now how do you double that this next month, right? A dude's like, I want to do $1,000 every day. Cool. How do you do 10 grand a day, right? Mm-hmm. What does that look like? And when you work for yourself, and that's what everybody right here on this screen does, when you work for yourself, you can work more and make more money. Most people that we know who work at a job, yes, you can maybe get overtime and get some time and a half, or you get some performance pay or a bonus or something. Go to your job and work an extra 12 hours this weekend and see what that pays you.
It's a black hole.
Versus working 12 hours for myself, right? I can take a Saturday, Sunday and build something that's $1,000 and I can do 6 of those on a weekend. That's $6,000. I can't make $6,000 extra at any job that I've ever had.
No, that's the truth.
Yeah, they're not set up that way.
And that will have to change. Like, the talent pool is going to continue to discover this, right? Like, I don't think it's sustainable in the way it is for the incentives to not be aligned more closely to this. Like, once word gets out, how are you going to keep people on the plantation? I don't get it. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next couple decades with the job market.
Maybe, but I mean, a lot of people are just pacified. I mean, there's going to be the bare minimum people. I mean, look how many people are close to me that I preach the message to, yet they just literally, how many times have you seen somebody in the room where we're having a conversation and they're doing whatever on the phone, but they're not involved in the conversation?
Oh man,
those are employees.
Yeah, and there are people that need to fill that role, but there's a lot of people in the middle that could be shaken awake by, same way I was, hopefully. So I think it'll be interesting to see.
Don't you think you were already waking up before you were shaken awake, though?
Well, in a lot of ways, that's part of what probably was a big contributor to my rapid rise to the occasion. Was I'd already done this in a lot of areas of life. It wasn't my first rodeo on, walking through the fire. So, I mean, it was with my source of income, but not for a lot of other areas. I won't bore you with it, but like it wasn't my first rodeo. So I think that helps, people that haven't endured hardship and overcome hard things, they need to, you need, and it will happen. Like, you don't have to go looking for it. Like, life will come at you eventually. But I think some version of that, and I'm not an elitist about what that looks like, but you need to have seen that you have what it takes, right? Like that will inspire you to do it in other areas. But yeah, it's a tough mindset to break out of. I definitely got shaken awake in that certain area.
Yeah, I had a delivery route for Wall Street Journal, Investors Business Daily, and New York Times. So I was getting about $1,800 a week. All 3 routes overlapped. Took about 4 hours of my time, 7 days a week. Yep. And I never would quit that job, right? They finally had enough and just fired me because I was taking weekends off and having people cover my routes to do gun shows. But when they fired me, I made more money that week that I was fired the next week than the entire month that I had ever made, even doing, sewing nylon gear as a hobby, right? Because I had to do it for real. And I would probably still be doing that had they not fired me from it.
Yeah.
I'd just be stuck.
Yeah, I think that's what it takes. You got to get disrupted.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, if you're fortunate enough to choose it of your own volition, good for you. I wasn't enough of a, I don't know. I didn't have the bravery or the courage for that. I had to be kicked off the boat to learn to swim.
I tried and failed multiple businesses before this situation.
Yeah.
And I had a successful nonprofit right before this, had to the extent you can do it. But I hated that. So I built finally I built something that was going okay. And I'm like,
dang, hated it.
I don't like what I do. But really, I think about, there were 4 other major things I put in early on where it was like fail, 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 fail. And the good thing was I didn't lose my butt every time I failed. But I really think part of what has worked for me in this particular iteration is my ass was on the line this time. It wasn't, your ass is always sort of on the line when you build something, but it was like, my next choice is convenience store if I don't do this well. So, I'm the kind of person who I will work. So I will work at the convenience store if that's my only choice. Yeah. But I'm much better in the situation I'm in now. And now it's just a matter of how do I make this situation go further.
I love what I told someone the other day. I really love your business. I'm envious that you have a product that people run out of every couple of days. Because it's
not once a week they run out.
Mine is not that way, right? Like the radio doesn't slowly whittle away and then need to be replaced. But you've got a great opportunity with that. It has its different challenges, I know, but it's really cool that is a great model if somebody's looking for something to get into, like anything that needs to be replenished. That would be a great one, but chances are there's a lot of competition in that.
I would say the part I am grappling with now is I don't go speak to a room full of 15 or 20 people and walk out with $600 in sales to cover my expenses, right? I'll walk out with, if I'm lucky, $100 to $200. And like, how much of that is me selling and how much of that is, just that's what's there for coffee, right?
Yeah, I got you.
But that's then true. If they turn into, like some percentage of those will just start mail ordering it at that point. So I try to follow those long tails and see, okay, was this speaking event worth the time investment for the long term,
I could
payoff?
See that would be tough to track.
Yeah. It's easier to track than you think. Because like the cool thing about it is I am niche enough that I recognize my customers.
Yeah.
Like I start seeing those same names and that's kind of cool to see. So
yeah, we got your coffee every 2 weeks for a while until I sold a massive website to a guy who supplies my coffee.
Yeah.
And so I barter with him for a tab, but as soon as that runs out, we're back on
You're
the
back.
holler roast train. But couldn't beat that it's just down the road. But I love your stuff, and it's definitely worth buying coffee from someone who doesn't hate you. That was my favorite thing about it. Like we used to get counterculture.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't buy coffee from people that want me dead. This is probably not a good thing to spend my money on. So I love that I could buy it from someone that agrees with me on some things at least. So that's kind of cool.
See,
Public Square, Public SQ, get on that app. Those people don't hate you.
That's true.
I have been meaning to do that and haven't, and now it's on my to-do list.
Yeah,
every one of these, John says something like that, and I'm like, oh, another to-do item this week.
They were at SRF.
Yeah, they need to be back at SRF.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put a profile up. I haven't done much with it, but they are always sending me emails that I want to read, like payment processors that are available that aren't, they're more cancel proof, stuff like that. So I dig that big time. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I love this. John's products last a lifetime, and yet I keep buying more. So John has solved both ends of this equation, Evan.
That's true. I don't
he just keeps making more cool stuff, and people are like, I gotta buy that.
Yeah.
But it is true. Like, having seen John's gear, if I see other stuff for sale at the store, I'm like, I can't. It's not good.
Yep.
So it's neat to, I don't know. I would have not known, had I not met John, I wouldn't probably have ever figured out what high quality gear even looks like.
No, you never see it.
Like the minute you see one, you're like, whoa, this is different. But you have to see it. Anyway. Okay, well, we're around in the corner here, about an hour and 40 minutes in. Maybe we should go around the horn and wrap up. Does that sound good?
Go for it.
Okay. John, you want to go first?
I do a live every night at 9:00 on YouTube. Jump on. We can talk about whatever you want to. My website, if you want to see what we actually make, is soetacticalgear.com. I'm on YouTube here. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We're all over the place, so you can see us wherever you like to view your content. And I am on the videos all the time, so you can actually get on and participate and interact. So see you tonight at 9:00.
All right. Evan, what do you got for us?
Well, check me out at radiomadeeasy.com. I've got tons of packages, products, and events that you can come for training. The premier event will be at Self-Reliance Festival in October. You can find that on my site or on selfreliancefestival.com. I'd love to pack the house with pirate radio operators. So let's do that for sure. You can come see me at a handful of different vendor events happening across the East Coast. I'll be at Self-Reliance. I'll be at Prepper Camp. Lots of different stuff. And if you want to host a class, like you can't make it to one and you're like, I really need this, but there's not one near me or it doesn't work with my schedule, I am looking for people to host. I just need a minimum of 6 people. So if you have a spot with out of the weather place we could use for the lecture portion, that's really all we need. Pretty low barrier to entry, and I'll come to you. So there's 10 or 12 options on the site and more to come on that front. And don't use your radio as a good luck charm. Figure out how to use it, get training, and buy something that's set up and ready to go out of the box. If I can do that for you, I'd love to. You can find me radiomadeeasy.com or on Instagram mainly. I have Facebook and all the other stuff too, but Instagram and the site are the best places.
Awesome. And of course, Self-Reliance Festival is right around the corner. It may not feel like it because we're not even we're officially in summer next week. Wow. And it's a fall event. But man, that's only a few months away. So if you're going to get your ticket, early bird pricing is over at selfreliancefestival.com. We've got a mega pass up if you want to take Evan's class and Self-Reliance Festival and the Joel Salatin poultry processing class And Chuck Peoples is doing a homestead first aid workshop during Self-Reliance Festival. That mega pass is there. Just go to selfreliancefestival.com. If you want to go more a la carte, we've got things broken out individually on the tickets page, but you can come and make 5 days of it. You can camp on the compound, rustic camping there. We're kind of playing with a bit of a anarchy approach to where we can park some more RVs, because I know a lot more people this time are coming with RVs. There are some spots nearby to park, but there's also some really great RV campgrounds nearby with like electrical hookups and heated showers and bathrooms if you want. But this one, you know, I say this every time, and it's because they get better every time. This one's shaping up to be the best one. It's like it's always the best one as far as content, because we have a lot more hands-on demos. We just closed in on a soap making demonstration. We've got things of that nature. We've got awesome presentations, from things that'll motivate you to really tangible, tactical things you can do to make your life better and to make yourself more resilient. But I always say it, John always says it, the best reason to come there is the people you meet, because together we are strong. And you may think that you are alone in the world, the only person who thinks this way, and you sort of get your injection of motivation at these Tuesday lives or on John Willis's 9 p.m. live streams, or, you know, listening to podcasts from people who are far away from you. But those people who you think are far away from you, there are some people near you who are thinking like you are, who you are likely to meet if you come to Self-Reliance Festival. So check it out, selfreliancefestival.com, guys. We'll be back next week. Thank you.